And right now, tensions along the southern border with Israel are at a breaking point, with fighting continuing. Fear of a wider regional war is growing by the day.
Israel has for years been targeting what it described as Iranian or Iran-backed targets in Syria. It has stepped up the campaign since the October 7th Hamas-led assault on Israel from Gaza, after which Iranian-backed Hezbollah fighters began firing rockets into Israel from Lebanon. A residential building in northern Israel was hit by a projectile on Monday after air raid sirens blared across the border town of Nahariya. Israeli media reported the building was hit by a drone launched from Lebanon. The strikes came a day after Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant visited troops in Gaza City, telling them, quote, "We are preparing for anything that can happen in the north." And saying that they could be redeployed on a short schedule.
According to Syrian state media, the attacks targeted a scientific research center and defense laboratories in and around the city of Masyaf. Several people have been injured. Some of them are reported to be in critical condition.
It is the deadliest strike reported by the Syrian government since the Iranian embassy compound in Damascus was hit in April. Two regional intelligence sources said a major military research center for chemical arms had been hit several times. They said it was believed to house a team of Iranian military experts involved in weapons production. The aftermath of what the Syrian government on Monday said were Israeli airstrikes the night before. Syria's health minister said the attacks killed at least 18 people and wounded dozens of others. Syrian state news agency Sana showed images of what it said were those wounded getting treatment.
Where Syria's state media is describing these strikes as the most violent and extensive in years, Syria is blaming Israel for these overnight strikes that targeted multiple locations in two governorates in central Syria, Tartus and Hama. Among the targets, the Masyaf Scientific and Research Center. It's not the first time that center has been hit in recent years. Now, Israel does not usually comment on individual strikes, but it has acknowledged carrying out hundreds of strikes in Syria with the aim or goal to really degrade the capabilities of Iran and its allies in Syria, to stop, for example, the supply route, the weapons supply route from Iran, Iraq, Syria to Lebanon. So what really we've been seeing in recent months, and really since October, we've seen these attacks become more frequent, is that Israel targets warehouses, arms depots, even airports when they believe that a shipment has arrived, all to ensure that Iran does not entrench itself militarily in Syria, and it's not able to open a new front against Israel from the Syria border. So this is a strategy that Israel has used for years now, and it seems that it is employing it in Lebanon as well. No doubt, they're employing the same strategy here. The aim is to degrade Hezbollah. What we've seen in recent days is an uptick in violence after a relative period of calm. Really, this border, what we've been seeing since October, is sporadic escalation. So an uptick in violence. Hezbollah increasing the number of rockets that it is firing across the border in response to Israel's intensification of strikes close to the border. So this tit for tat. But Hezbollah focusing on towns, damaging a lot of homes in this 5-kilometer deep radius along the border, areas which have been largely evacuated from civilians. Israel, in its strikes, really has been focusing on targeting Hezbollah's military assets. So despite this uptick in violence, both sides still sticking to the unwritten rules of engagement to focus on military targets. Even though we're hearing a lot of rhetoric from the Israelis, the Israeli Prime Minister saying that the situation needs to change. He instructed the army, the security forces to prepare for change along the border. But both sides are showing that they're still calibrating their attacks to avoid a larger war, especially since Israel doesn't seem to have the U.S. backing, at least until the U.S. elections in November.
When you hear Israeli officials speak, they'll say that they're fighting 6 or 7 different fronts, right? The one that is probably the most difficult to understand and get accurate reporting on is what's going on in Syria. Strikes like the one we just saw, 14 people reportedly killed, And we don't really know what Israel is doing there, not in a precise way.
Well, this is not the first time, as you know. I mean, Israel has been raiding Syria over the last 20, 25 years. Even it predated October 7th, and particularly after the onset of the Arab uprisings. The Israelis have one objective there, is to prevent the Iranians from consolidating their position in Syria. So the positioning of Iranian forces are actually a threat to Israel from their own perspective. So they've been targeting them anywhere, and they're killing all their leaders. There's one thing also conditioned Israeli behavior vis-a-vis the Syrians, that the Syrians are not in control of Syria. So every time there's a kind of transfer of weapon to Hezbollah, this would affect the balance of power. So the Israelis think that the best way is to preempt that by attacking these convoys, military installations, Iranian officials. They've been doing this. This is their own strategy. It's actually a kind of a preventive measure in order not to allow Hezbollah to mount an offense that would probably bring Israel to its knees.
And there's very little accountability for this, right? Because nobody is actually denouncing this. You said the Syrian authorities are not saying anything publicly about this, or hardly. The media reporting is not super accurate. It's difficult to get access to the places where these strikes are happening and to get great information, up-to-date information. So the Israelis and everyone else who's operating in Syria, by the way, can pretty much get away with doing what they want in Syria. As long as it's in Syria, they can get away with it. Yeah,
there's a kind of controlled anarchy in Syria. We don't have really a government that is in control of the situation in Syria. And we have the Syrians who are not saying the truth, and we have the Israelis who are always keeping silent because they don't want to disclose what they've been doing in Syria.
But do we have an idea of who's achieving what then? Like, is Israel even achieving its operational goals in Syria? Do we know?
Yeah, but this is the point. They've achieved some, as it's obvious, by targeting the senior, I would say, officials, Iranians, military men and installation. But this actually does not prevent this transfer of weapon to Hezbollah. I mean, they have not succeeded into that. And the evidence is that Hezbollah is in a really good position in terms of military capabilities. They can mount really an attack in Israel, so an attack that could be even a successful one. So we know that the Israelis believe that they don't have any other choice other than targeting the Syrians with impunity, of course, because the Syrian regime is condemning these things, but without doing anything. They always pledged that they would and threatened that they would retaliate, but they never did that. So the Israelis, it's easier for them to target any place in Syria and getting away with that, other than targeting Lebanon, for instance, when Hezbollah is always in a mood of tit for tat. So this is the situation right now.